Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to... We haven't done one of these in a while.
We haven't, you're right.
What we're doing is... We call these our limited overview shows, which we do... Well, we used to do before the release of every set. We missed a couple, one or two, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But we've decided to get back doing them. They're a useful resource for us, because they make us actually think about the set before we start playing, and we get to talk about kind of cards that are going to be important. And then they're useful for you if you are going to be going to your pre-release and you don't have a ton of time to maybe listen to a 5-hour set review on limited resources.
Exactly.
And you just want a kind of a quick breakdown of things you want to watch out for, what you should be expecting to see draft in and draft out. And yeah, sort of how the format has shifted, or how we think the format will shift from when it was just 3 packs of Shadows over Innistrad.
So now it's 2 packs of Eldritch Moon, 1 pack of Shadows,
which is a huge impact. Like it's very much a new format.
And Shadows also the last pack.
Shadows will be the last pack, so you can't rely on your build around enchantments anymore. You can't take them early and then build around them, and you can't rely on getting them late. So it changes the look of the format, the feel of the format, a lot more than you may think.
And it also kills some things.
It kills some things. It creates new things. It's definitely a huge shake-up, which I'm excited for because
Me too.
Because I've been playing a lot of Shadows, and I still enjoy drafting Shadows.
I counted how many Shadows drafts I've done.
How many have you done?
Over 160.
160 drafts.
Yeah.
And do you still enjoy drafting?
Yeah,
Shadows.
I did it again last night. One of those was last night.
Quick, before we get started on the Eldritch Moon stuff, quick note on Shadows. One of my favorite formats.
I think it might be either my favorite or a close second favorite since we started playing.
Yeah, it's really, really good format. I don't think anything's beaten the original Modern Masters for me so far.
Sure.
But, man's
cans.
Shadows was a great format. Just really, really interesting, really deep, lots going on. Like, we did a draft on Friday, and I tried a deck that I'd never tried before, and was trying to figure it out. I played Blue-White Tempo, and I'd never played that deck before, and I think there was something there, but it was like, I was still figuring stuff out right at the end of the format. Which I really enjoyed. Right, but we move on. We have a chat about Eldritch Moon.
Yes.
Eldritch Moon is the second set in Shadows over Innistrad block. It's the last set in Shadows over Innistrad block.
Yeah, I was about to say second and final, yeah.
Since they moved to the 2-set block model. It's a small-ish set. You want to call it a medium set.
Yeah, it's a medium set, because small sets usually have like 160 cards, 180?
180. And this is a 205 card set. The reason for that, obviously, is the double face card.
All have their own sheet.
Yeah.
So it's a small set plus an extra 30 cards or so?
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is enough to call it, because big sets are only 230, 250.
260, I believe.
Depends, I think.
I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a set.
It's a set
with cards in it.
But the fact that it's a small set means that ordinarily you'll be seeing more of the same common and that kind of thing, and the print runs become a little more evident on Magic Online and paper as well in small sets. But because of the double face cards, that throws a lot of that for a loop anyway.
Yeah, so like it's just consider it a normal draft format.
Pretty much.
Don't be worrying about, well, I can definitely get 4 of this common.
Yeah,
doesn't quite work out like that.
Well, it does in a way, because the double face cards take up their own slot in the pack.
Yeah.
So there's just one less common.
Yeah, and if there's one double face card that you want lots of, then you're more likely to see those.
Yeah.
There's some new mechanics.
Yeah.
And some mechanics that are returning from Shadows of Innistrad, and some mechanics that aren't returning from Shadows of Innistrad. And because I'm the only one who took notes...
Well, I helped you write the notes.
I have them all in front of me. So we have... we're going to touch on this very briefly because it's not a huge deal, but there's a very interesting mechanic called Meld, which I hate.
I hate it too.
So Meld...
Although I have seen them now.
Yep.
And they actually don't look so bad.
I hate them for design philosophy reasons.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that very briefly. Meld, basically what it is, you will see cards sometimes in your draft that will be double face cards, but the back side of them will only have half of the card on it. Right? The top half with some art and some mana cost.
Yeah.
Well, no mana cost, but the name of the card. And then the bottom half will have like text and power and toughness.
Just rules text, yeah.
Yeah. And you might be thinking, what the hell is going on here? Well, these are Meld cards. So Meld cards will say there will be some condition, and they will exile themselves if you control both of the cards that are important, that are part of the Meld pair, and return themselves to the battlefield melded. And when they are melded, you flip them both upside down, and you put the 2 cards together and make one big card, which is fine.
So you don't like it because it's a rules nightmare?
I don't like it because I don't like cards that name other cards.
I hate that too.
I don't like...
That's Yu-Gi-Oh stuff.
Yeah, as a side note, I think it's lazy design to have cards that name other cards. I feel a similar way about tribal mechanics sometimes. I think if you're going to be, a good designer of a game, then you want the synergy to be inherent within the cards, and you don't need to stamp synergy onto cards. So Delirium is a very good example of a a set of synergy that I really like because it's
elegant.
It's elegant, and it doesn't require cards that have specific words on them. It requires cards that just work well with the strategy, which I like. But Meld will name specific cards. So an example would be something like Chittering Host. Chittering Host is the melded pair of Graph Rats and the Scavengers. What are they called?
Something Scavengers.
Midnight Scavengers.
Yeah.
So Graph Rats is just a 2-mana 2/1, I believe. I'm looking for it here. Graph Rats is just a 2-mana 2/1 in black. And it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you both own and control Graph Rats and a creature named Midnight Scavengers, exile them, then meld them into Chittering Host. I really don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is really complicated. Basically, Midnight Scavengers then is a 5-mana 3/3 that you can return when it enters the battlefield. You can return a creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard.
Such as a Graph Rat.
And then it says in little reminder text, melds with Graph Rats. Okay, Graph Rats I should say. And then the melded side is a 5/6 haste, and it says when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain +1/+1/+0 menace till end of turn.
Now, what's worth noting here, which I found out the other day, and I'm 99% sure it's correct, if you have a clone of a melded card?
Yeah, so it's super weird.
Well, there's a clone in the set.
There's lots of weird rules nightmares. There is a clone in the set.
So if you have a copy of say you have your own real Graph Rats
and a copy of a Midnight Scavengers,
they will exile to meld and never come back.
They will stay exiled.
Just go away, and the meld is not a May ability.
Nope. So you want to be careful with that. If it is a stolen Graph Rats,
then it won't meld.
Then obviously it won't meld because you don't own and control both of them. When they are melded, you treat them as one card, but if they would be moved to another zone other than the battlefield, both cards go.
So they get bounced?
If they get bounced, both cards will return to your hand and you will have to replay them face up. If they are killed, they will both go to the graveyard. If they are exiled, they will both be exiled, etc, 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 etc.
They do actually... I was watching Loading Ready Runs pre-release last night. They do actually look kind of sweet.
Yeah, they're kind of big cards. I just think naming other cards is stupid.
Sure.
There's only one common meld pair, and that is Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers. The others are 2 rares.
Gisela and Bruna.
And then, Gisela and Bruna are rare in a mythic.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
And then there's 2 rares in Hanweir Battlements and something else.
Hanweir Township, isn't
it? Hanweir the Writhing Township is the melded side. But anyway, this is not something you'll see very often unless you're playing black and you pick Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers. Midnight Scavengers on its own is a reasonable card.
So is Graph Rats.
Graph Rats is a reasonable card. If you happen to meld them, very powerful effect. The fives giving everything menaces is huge.
Midnight Scavenger also gets back your Graph Rats.
Yeah, which is a nice little piece of synergy. So, yeah, I mean, meld is something you may see a little bit. You definitely, I would be very surprised if you see more than once a melded pair other than the Midnight Scavengers and the Graph Rats, Chittering Host. But Chittering Host is something you may see a little bit, and you'll want to be aware of how those cards interact. There's plenty of resources out there for the more specific rules questions, but what I would say is both of those cards are reasonable on their own. If you happen to pick them up, great. I wouldn't go too hard drafting like 4 copies of Graph Rats to go with your Midnight Scavengers, but they're both reasonable cards, and you may see this the odd time. So we'll move on from Meld, just because there's not many Meld cards.
Those are literally all the Meld cards.
All the Meld cards that we care about. To Escalate. Escalate is another new mechanic, and what is Escalate, Dennis?
Escalate's kicker.
Escalate's kicker.
There's an old saying in Magic that all mechanics are basically kicker.
Yeah.
Escalate literally is just multi-kicker.
Yeah. So Escalate is an ability on spells
that have multiple modes.
Yeah,
so
spells.
You pay a base cost to select one of the modes, and you can pay the Escalate cost any number of times to select any of the other modes.
Yeah.
You can't select a mode more than once.
So it'll say something like Blessed Alliance is the card I have here. Blessed Alliance is an Escalate spell. It's 1 and a white for an instant, and it has 3 modes. It says choose 1 or more, right? So it's target player gains 4 life, untap up to 2 target creatures, target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature.
How much is Escalate on that bad boy?
Escalate 2. So it's a very powerful card. What this does is, you can kind of think of it as a bit of a split card.
Yeah.
You can cast it as a 2-mana sack an attacking creature or ambush some something with untapping 2 creatures, you can get a 1/1 out of it. Sometimes you can do both. You can untap your creatures and get a 2/1 out of it.
And if you have mana lying around, you might as well gain 4 life.
Exactly. So I think it's a very powerful effect. The ability to have a card scale into the late game is really strong. And if you're happy to pay 2 mana for one of the effects, then the Escalate value goes up a lot because when you just have mana lying around, you get some extra value.
I would pay 1 away target bonus sacrifice attacking creature.
We've paid more than that.
Yeah.
For that same effect. Rules wise, they work the same as any other modal card. You choose what modes you are casting as you cast the spell when you put the spell on the stack, and once you have chosen your modes and chosen your targets, the cost is determined. So, for example, I wouldn't go Blessed Alliance escalating once, and then my opponent goes sure, and then I say I'm going to untap these creatures. That's not going to work.
Also, if you copy it, you don't get to change the modes.
Correct. And that's relevant for things like Geist Blast, I suppose. But yeah, so the way it would work is I would say I am casting Blessed Alliance. I am choosing 2 modes. I am choosing to have you sacrifice an attacking creature and to untap these 2 target creatures.
Now I will.
Then
pay
the
4
game
for
will
this.
say, well, you have to pay 3 and a white for that, and then I will play the costs, and then the spell will be on the stack, and my opponent can interact with it. That's how it goes in a rules kind of sense. Similar to any other modal card.
It will resolve again. The spell will resolve so long as it has 1 legal target.
Correct. And I suppose it's worth noting that on modal spells where you choose more than one mode, they will resolve in order.
Yeah,
so in this case, I would untap my creatures and then they would sacrifice a creature. It's very rarely relevant that this happens
because you can't interact between modes.
Yeah, but sometimes it might make a difference. I don't know when. I haven't really had a look for a situation where it would matter with certain Escalate cards, but you do resolve them in the order on the card. Powerful effect. Like powerful mechanic.
Yeah, versatility is nice.
Yeah, and it's only on a few cards, but most of them seem to have. The way it seems to be is most of them have one effect that you're going to be using the most often. Yeah, and then some gravy.
Exactly.
But sometimes the gravy's really nice.
I don't like gravy. I don't really like gravy.
You don't like gravy? In
a culinary sense.
Okay, neither does Lauren. I don't know if that's.
Well, there you go.
Here we are. Another thing you guys have in common.
What's our third and final fancy new mechanic, Oisin?
Our third and final fancy new mechanic is.
To merge.
Is it a merge?
Yeah.
It is a merge.
Where are your notes now, jackass?
They're right here. They're actually at the top of my notes, and I just scrolled past it. Shit. Okay, so we've got a merge. A merge, again, not on a huge number of cards, but enough that it will.
On like 3 or 4 commons, 3 or 4 uncommons, and 3 or 4 rares.
2 emerge commons.
Yeah.
Emerge is the new Eldrazi mechanic.
So I love it.
Really?
I like it.
Okay, so let's talk about what it. Do you want to talk about what emerge is?
So what emerge does is a creature with emerge will have its ordinary casting cost, which is usually very high.
So, for example, a card like Wretched Griff.
Wretched Griff costs 7 mana.
7 colorless mana.
For a 3/4. Or its emerge cost is 5 and a blue. And you're like, but Dennis, that's only 1 smaller. Well, joke's on you, listener, because you sacrifice a creature when you cast it for its emerge cost.
Do you want to read the reminder?
I'll read the actual text. Emerge 5 and a blue. You may cast the spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the emerge cost, reduced by that creature's converted mana cost.
Yep.
So, ordinarily the Griff costs 7, its emerge cost is 5 and a blue, so if I sack a 3-drop, I get to play it for 2 and a blue.
Yep. And
then the Griff itself is a 3/4 flyer that draws a card and enters the battlefield. So the flavour of that is you have this ordinary creature, and then yours bursts out of it like John Hurt in Alien.
Yeah, I think Aliens, yeah.
Which is great. Oisin doesn't like it because it is an inherent 2-for-1.
But most of the cards that have emerge...
Every single one of them has a spell of some description stapled to it.
Yeah.
Of varying degrees of goodness.
So another important thing to note is that they use the Eldrazi model of the cast trigger for a lot of these. So even if the creature is countered, you will still get the cast trigger.
You will still have to sacrifice your creature as well, because that's part of the cost.
That's part of the cost, yeah. So having said that I'm not a huge fan of it, I am willing to see how it plays out. There are a couple of things within Emerge that I really, really like. Like, for example, the crab, the 9 mana 5/7.
Which Eldrazi crab in the set are you talking about?
There's multiple Eldrazi crabs in the set, but Drown Your Behemoth is the card I'm talking about, which is a 9 mana 5/7 flash. It has hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn. Really nice way to word that effect. I really like that. And it has Emerge for 7 and a blue. The reason I like that is largely because of the flash. I think Emerge, there's 1 or 2, I think there's 2 flash emerge.
The rare has flash.
The rare has flash. Elder Deep Fiend, the Eldrazi Octopus, your classic Eldrazi Octopus. But Drown Your Behemoth is an uncommon, so you'll see that a bit more often. The reason I like it is because it has flash. So let's say they point a removal spell at one of your creatures. You get to go, great, I'll play my 2 mana 5/7 flash. By sacrificing my creature that was already going to die, or that was already going to die in combat.
Now, the other way to get a spell out of that is a 5/7 is going to eat just about anything
in combat.
So they attack you with their 4/3, you sack your 4-drop, you upgrade it to a 5/7, and you eat their guy.
Some notes, you cannot, even though there is like emerge 7 and a blue, you can't not sacrifice a creature and pay 7 and a blue for it.
No, yeah, exactly.
You must sacrifice a creature even if the creature has 0 CMC. Converted mana cost of transformed cards are the converted mana cost of the face-up side as of pre-Shadows of Innistrad release. So that's something to watch out for with that.
Also, the Emerge only reduces the colorless cost of the effect.
Correct. You can't play Emerge cards 4/0 by sacrificing something with large enough CMC. It will only reduce the colorless part. And all of the Emerge costs have at least a colored mana in it.
But they're all colorless creatures.
Exactly. Now that moves us on. Do you think you can play Emerge cards in decks that can't emerge them?
You can probably play the Gryff.
The Gryff is a 7 mana 3/4 flyer. When you cast it, draw a card. That's
not a good card.
Almost playable on its own.
Yeah.
Not quite, but probably.
The 9-drop is just a no.
The 8-drop that
just no.
Lashweed Lurker can possibly be played. It's a 5/4 that when you cast it, you put a non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. I'd almost pay 8 mana for that. And if I have the option to emerge it, then I'll definitely put it in my deck.
Yeah.
But like I can see casting that without the emerge. There are some cards in the set that synergize with the emerge mechanic.
There's some cards that profit from dying.
That want to be sacrificed. So you've got cards like Enlightened Maniac, which is a 4 mana 0/2 in blue that comes with a 3/2 Eldrazi. So you've gotten your body out of it, even if the body's a little weak.
Yeah.
Like a 4 mana 3/2 is not great. You want to pay 3 mana for that. Having an 0/2 lying around can be useful in just like jumping situations, but then also the 0/2 just lying around has CMC 4, so you can sacrifice it to reduce your emerge costs. Blah, blah,
you can play that on turn 4 and then your crab on turn 5.
Exactly. So that kind of synergizes, and then there's also Desperate Sentry is the white one.
Yeah.
Very similar card.
It's a 3/2 and white for a 1/2. When it dies, it makes a 3/2.
And it also gets +3/0 if you have Delirium or something like that. Yeah, good card. But yeah, so there's a couple cards in there that want to die, and they help the emerge thing. There's also just... sometimes you're just going to have a random 2/2 lying around that's not relevant anymore.
Emerging Tokens doesn't do anything.
Emerging Tokens allows you to pay the emerge cost, which is not nothing.
Sure.
But will not reduce the cost in any way.
Exactly.
And I think we can probably move on from... Emerge is primarily in blue and green, a little bit in black at higher rarities.
See, what you notice here, though, is the kicker effect, what's it called?
Escalate
is only on a couple of cards.
Yeah.
Emerge is only on a couple of cards.
Yeah.
Meld is literally on 6 cards.
2 of which are not rare.
Yeah. And the reason for that is we still have...
mechanics from Shadows.
We still have Madness and Delirium.
We have Madness and we have Delirium. There's some good Madness cards in the set and some decent Madness enablers. I'm not going to go too heavy into Madness because you know what Madness does if you've been playing Shadows of Innistrad. But the point is that deck still works. Your Reckless Scholars from Innistrad are still really valuable because you still want to be madnessing your things. Vampires still have a lot of Madness theme in them. And then... yeah, it's primarily in blue, red, and black.
The thing for me, though, the card that I needed to make a vampire deck good was Stensia Masquerade. And that is almost impossible to get now because it's in pack 3.
Yeah, you can go, like, looking at the vampires in the set, you can go a little bigger. So that deck, the Shadows of Innistrad Vampires deck was a really low curve aggressive deck, and Stensia Masquerade was kind of the only thing that was like high power level in your deck. Whereas this vampire deck can actually go a little bigger and swing races really, really well. And just use Madness as sort of a sub-theme, whereas that old Vampires deck was really Madness reliant. There's some good blue Madness cards as well for the blue-red kind of spellsy deck. I think it's still viable, the blue-red Madness deck. You've got some more discard outlets that I can't remember the names of at the moment. But yeah, there's more Madness cards, a couple of which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And what was the other one that's back? Delirium. Delirium, again, same sort of deal. Some cards have Delirium on them. The deck is still viable as far as I can tell. There's still enchantments that want to be sacrificed in this format. You can still get your vessels from Shadows of Innistrad. There's still some self-mill. And there's a little bit more to the self-mill in this format than there was in the previous one. There's more kind of things that care about your graveyard, I've found, than in Shadows, even though things cared about your graveyard in Shadows. And then you've got sort of the upgradable spells, like Galvanic Bombardment and take inventory that sort of want to be milled as well. So there's several situations in this format where you want to be milling yourself. Delirium being one of them. But Delirium's back, Madness is back, both great mechanics, really interesting mechanics.
What's not back, Oisin?
There's two big ones that aren't back. Investigate is probably the biggest.
And that is probably the bullet in the back of the neck for
Blue-green.
Yeah.
Blue-green Clues was a super sweet deck.
But you had to open Ongoing Investigation or Ultimate Mysteries.
You could do it with there was a lot of Investigate. There was 3 build-around enchantments, 4 clues.
You're not getting Trail of Mystery there, are you?
I think it was, yeah.
No.
And then there was cards like Graph Mole. And,
you needed a Graph Mole, or really you need one of either Open Mysteries or Ongoing Investigation.
There was also the flyer that
or Raw Illuminator.
Yeah.
Raw Illuminator doesn't give you any payoff for clues, it gives you more clues.
Yeah. So like, it was definitely a really strong deck.
It was a great deck. It was very reliant on uncommons though.
Yeah.
And now when you have only one pack, and that pack is pack 3, and there's no clues in the first 2 packs.
Yeah. You get no clues out of Eldritch Moon. You get only one pack looking for your uncommons, and the biggest problem is as well, even if somehow you went, well, I want to build this deck anyway, you can't know that you're going to get one of these uncommons until pack 3.
Exactly.
The advantage of taking one of those early as kind of a hedge in pack 1 of Shadows of Innistrad, like we've all kind of gone, ooh, Ulvenwald Mysteries, I'll see where this goes.
But they've almost kind of done us a favour there in that to not letting you into that trap by putting no Investigate cards in the set.
Yeah.
So you can't end up in a clue deck because there is no clue deck to fall into.
It just means those cards are almost completely unplayable now.
Yeah.
I mean, Ulvenwald Mysteries is still a fine card.
Ongoing Investigation is too, because Ongoing Investigation investigates by itself.
Yeah, as does Ulvenwald Mysteries.
Yeah.
But things like Graph Mole get a little weaker. It's just hard to make that deck work. And then the other thing that's gone is sort of the traditional werewolves.
Yep.
Werewolves that flip when it's nighttime, quote unquote. When no one's cast a spell, and then flip back when it's daytime when someone's cast 2 spells. Those aren't in Eldritch Moon. We have new werewolves.
Eldrazi werewolves,
which are kind of like, this isn't even my final form sort of territory.
Where their front side is a normal werewolf.
Yeah, their front side will be a werewolf, often a werewolf horror, which is relevant for the Thing in the Ice decks.
Which got a lot worse in the set.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's a werewolf horror. Let's take a look at one. Kessig Prowler is a really strong example. Kessig Prowler is an uncommon. It's green for a 2/1 werewolf. And it has 4 and a green. Transform it, and then it transforms into Sinuous Predator and Eldrazi Werewolf. That's my phone. That's very embarrassing. Which can't be blocked by more than one creature. So this for those of you who played in Theros block. This is very reminiscent of Monstrous, or Monstrosity, or whatever the ability was called. Monstrosity.
Yeah.
Which was, you have your creature, it has some stats and an effect, but you can pay some amount of mana to make it monstrous, make it bigger, and have an additional effect, or maybe trigger something, etc., etc. These are very similar. This is an early creature that is fine on its own, that you can, in the late game, pay a bunch of mana and upgrade it. Again, similar to Escalate, very, very powerful effect. Like having your
hinging on an ordinary version of the card being fine.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be careful that you're playing a decent front side, and I think Kessig Prowler is.
Well, that's a great one.
Yeah, but like
either the decent front side has to be good, or the other side needs to be really good.
Yeah, like you've got lots of kind of versions of this at common and uncommon. Ulvenwald Captive makes mana until you flip it, and then it's huge and also makes mana. And so on and so forth. It's primarily in green and red, I believe. I don't think there's any outside of green and red even. They are still werewolves. They will still synergize with your flash enchantment that gives them +1/+1 hunger. The hellback? No.
Oh, come on, Dennis. Oh my god.
Yeah. No, you know the card. We'll pull it up on the video. Dennis will put it in the editing bit.
Howl. Who?
Something
about hounds or howls.
But yeah, so they are still werewolves. They will still synergize with those effects. They're still werewolves when they're Eldrazi werewolves. But like we were talking about with Escalate, the ability to have a cheap card with a decent effect that becomes stronger in the late game is a very, very powerful thing to have. Flexibility, as we were talking about, is really strong. And it allows you to fill your deck with cheap cards and still have late game, which is very, because like normally if you want late game you have to put expensive cards in your deck, and have the ability to have late game power without putting late game cards in your deck is super strong.
Is it this?
Hellpack Resurgence? Is that what it's called?
Yes, it is.
Hellpack Resurgence. We did it, Dennis.
Hellpack Resurgence, 2 and a green, yeah.
They will still get bonuses from that.
What about the other side?
They are still Eldrazi werewolves on the other side.
Okay.
I believe. Let me just take a look at one of them. Yeah, it's an Eldrazi. It's a werewolf horror. They're werewolf horrors that flip into Eldrazi werewolves.
Cool.
But yeah, very, very powerful cards, most of them. Just bear in mind that, like, oh, that's a lot of mana. 6 mana to transform Smoldering Werewolf. That's a lot of mana.
Don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it, and it's something to do when you've got nothing else to do.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the way you want to be evaluating these cards when you're looking at them in your pool, in your sealed pool, in your pack one, pick one. You're evaluating them in the context of the front side is fine on its own, and it's late game power without having to put expensive cards in my deck. Very, very powerful mechanic.
So now they've gone.
Monstrous was really, really strong in Theros block.
Now they've gone through some changes from the old set. Let's move into the hardest part to do the video for, listing all of the removal spells.
Yeah, so okay, I'm not gonna. You don't have to put all of these in, but what you want to be aware of, it's a good thing to kind of. It's a very good peek at the format's speed, and what's important is the removal. The reason being that, like, if the removal's very strong, generally speaking, the format slows down. If the removal's very weak, format speeds up, and if the removal's very weak, you might start relying more on combat tricks. And
when
like
auras
that.
Get better and stuff.
So it affects the power level of a lot of different cards. Having said that, the removal in the set seems to be pretty strong.
I think I would agree with that.
Definitely a lot stronger than Shadows of Innistrad. Shadows of Innistrad was weak in terms of removal. I don't
know that it was.
I think it was. I think at Uncommon you had some very strong removal spells. But
yeah, Bamba Moonsword, but you had
the common removal spells seemed to be very weak.
Angelic Purge?
Angelic Purge was good.
Deadweight is conditional, I guess.
Sure. But like
Fiery Temper's really good.
Fiery Temper's very strong.
I don't think it was that weak.
You had cards like Throttle and a big red one.
Burnt to Ashes. Yeah, but they don't put Murder anymore, you know?
They don't print Murder anymore, except they did, Dennis. Murder's back at Uncommon. I'm going to start in white, but we'll get to Murder.
Okay.
I'm going to start in white with Faith Unbroken, which is a 4-mana aura for a creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2, and when Faith Unbroken enters the battlefield, you exile target creature for as long as you control Faith Unbroken. So it's an O-ring that staples itself to a creature and gives it +2/+2.
It seems great if you can resolve it.
Seems great if you can resolve it. Has other issues, though, which is your O-rings, generally, in Limited, are sticking around.
Yeah, unless people bring in naturalizers or whatever, they're not killing your O-ring.
However, when you put a Faith Unbroken on your creature and they kill the creature,
they get their guy back.
Exactly. So it still suffers the same problems that auras do. I think it's a powerful effect, very powerful tempo effect.
Very swingy effect, yeah.
Like, if you get to go +2/+2 my guy and get your biggest blocker out of the way and swing for loads on that turn for 4 mana.
And then if they kill your guy, it's kind of okay.
It's kind of okay, because you got a big effect out of it.
They can still bounce or kill your guy in response.
They can, and if they do it with the trigger on the stack, you obviously won't lose your guy at all, because it's a single trigger. Blessed Alliance, we've already talked about. The Escalate, sack a guy 1. Cool note that a lot of people don't know. If you choose the target player sacrifices an attacking creature mode, one thing you can do, let's say you're my opponent, and you're attacking me with a 4/4 and a 1/1, and I go, I don't really want to play my Blessed Alliance. He just sacrifices the 1/1. What I can do is let combat damage happen, block your 1/1, trade for or eat your 1/1 presumably. Sure. Your 4/4 hits me and deals me 4 damage, but there is a step after combat damage,
secret hidden step
called the end combat step, which a lot of people don't really know about, where you can cast your Blessed Alliance,
and the creature
is still technically attacking, and will have. So you can take the hit, but you guarantee you kill the thing you want to kill. It's a neat little trick that you can do. We saw that come up in, I believe, N15.
Divine Verdict and stuff.
Choking Restraints is the other white removal spell that's not rare. Choking Restraints it's a 3-mana pacifism that you can pay 3 white to sacrifice to exile the creature. Sometimes relevant. Mostly just a pacifism, but I suppose for things like cards with static effects that you might want to remove, and then when you have the mana, deal with the static effect.
Yeah.
So something like a Sin Prodder.
Or like a Tireless Tracker.
Tireless
Tracker is huge, and you want to pacify it to stop it hitting you, but you also want to stop giving them clues all the time.
Exactly. So you can invest the extra mana, or you can just, if you have the extra mana lying around, it's pretty good to stop them emerging it.
Yeah.
Pacifism effects get a little weaker with Emerge in the set as well, but this one obviously has a little bit of a mitigating clause. And you can do that at instant speed, say on your opponent's end step when you're not countering their spell or doing something else. Moving on to blue. Blue actually got. I'm hesitant to call this a removal spell, but it seems like a very powerful effect, so I'm going to talk about it. It's Spontaneous Mutation, which is a single blue aura. It's got flash, and it enchants a creature, and the enchanted creature gets -X, -0, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. Can be used as a combat trick, just sort of a Jason Scrutiny type effect, but also if you're playing like a Flyersy type deck, -5, -0 is basically equivalent to
killing it, yeah.
Because we don't care about it attacking, and it's not blocking our flyers. One of those weird cards that's very cheap, so you think of it as an early game card, but it's not, because you need cards in your graveyard.
And you can stick it on something and watch it grow over time, but really you don't want to do that, I don't think.
Black obviously gets plenty of removal, but not interestingly as much as red in this format. Black got Ruthless Disposal, which neither of us like, I don't think. It's a 5 mana sorcery. I don't have it in front of me. You want to hear something cool, Dennis? I haven't had any of the removal spells in front of me so far. I've definitely gotten all of them wrong.
There it is. It is 5.
It is 5. It's a 5 mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, discard a card and sacrifice a creature.
Jeez!
This better do something great. 2 target creatures get -13 till end turn. So kill your Emrakul and your Ulamog. They both fall into a hole.
They do.
It's double Tragic Slip, but you have to sacrifice a creature and discard a card. Now you can mitigate that a little bit with creatures that we've already talked about, some creatures that want to die, and maybe in the very, very late game you can madden something or discard a land to turn on Delirium, so you can turn it into upside a little bit, but ultimately it's a 3 for 2. I'm not sure how powerful this card is going to be. I think it's like being able to kill basically any 2 creatures. I think any 2 creatures in the format for 5 mana is very strong, but it's a big cost.
I think it might be good. I think realistically this card actually might just be good.
Yeah, I mean, like discarding an extra land, sacrificing an irrelevant creature to kill 2 huge
They're 2
threats.
best things.
Yeah, it's strong. It's I'm interested to see how this one's going to play out, to be honest with you. We also have...
I mean, we play Bone Splinter sometimes.
We did play Bone Splinter. We played Bone Splinters in very specific decks.
I'm pretty happy with it, though, I think.
We have Boon of Emrakul, which is an aura that gives enchanted creature +3/-3. Very simple card.
Kills a lot of stuff.
2 and a black.
It is, yeah.
Kills things, kills small things, and then say you have a Wretched Griff and you want to just crash for 6 a turn, you can do that if you don't think they're going to be able to deal 1 damage to it. That is also, but generally speaking, it is a 3 mana removal spell.
Yeah.
Certain Death is a 6 mana common removal spell. Destroy target creature. Its controller loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, I believe. This is just what we get now. It's 5 mana black. It's your common removal spell. It's fine.
I think there's enough good other ones in the set that I don't think I'm going to be playing it. I think it's going to fall into the same hole that Burnt Ash fell into the last set. I'm just not going to play it. And that costs 5.
Yeah. And then we also have one of the best removal spells that we've seen in a limited environment recently, which is Murder.
1 black, destroy target creature.
At instant speed.
And they've put flavor text on it now, which I'm mad about.
Really? What's the flavor text?
I don't know, but it used to just say destroy target creature.
Very, very simple looking card. But yeah, Murder, it's going to be your pack 1, pick 1 a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, big time.
Like when you see it, it's one of the most powerful. Like we just don't get removal like Murder anymore.
No, yeah.
Except we just did.
Yeah.
Do you know? It's unbelievably powerful for a modern limited environment. We used to get Doomblade at common
back in the day.
Now at common we get Certain Death.
Yeah.
So Murder is going to be really, really strong. You're going to be picking it very, very early. It's one of the biggest pulls into black that I've seen in the set. Red traditionally gets a lot of burn. It's kind of the
no different.
Only color I've seen in the format that has like cheap ways to interact with creatures in a permanent way.
Yeah,
like
there's no dead weight or anything.
Blue can bounce things, and
blue technically has the thing to reduce its power.
Yeah, but red is really good at interacting with early creatures.
Yep.
So we have, in that vein, we have Incendiary Flow. Gross name for magic, right? But it's just Volcanic Hammer that exiles, basically. It can hit players, sometimes relevant. It's 2 mana, 3 damage to a creature player. If a creature would die this way, you exile.
It's a sorcery.
It's a sorcery. There's things like the ones from
going to be first picking that a lot. I think
you're going to be first picking that a lot. Lightning Strike is very powerful. It's not instant speed, but 2 mana
can't hit players either.
3 damage.
Can it?
It can hit players.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 mana, 3 damage is a first pickable card.
The shock can't hit players, sorry.
The shock can't hit players. The shock, speaking of which, is Galvanic Bombardment. It's a single red. I mentioned it earlier. It's a single red instant. Deals 2 damage to a creature. And then, this is a bit of a weird one, deals 1 damage to that creature for each. It deals X to a creature where X is 2 plus the number of Galvanic Bombardments in your graveyard. So it's.
So the first Galvanic Bombardment is the shock. The second one's a bolt.
The third one's a flame slash.
Yeah,
and so on, so on. Like you're gonna be finding it very difficult to get multiples of these.
You get 2 of them, I think.
Everyone's gonna want the first pick.
Yeah, because it's just a great card.
It's just a really strong card. Shock is very powerful. Like you saw how high people took Deadweight, and this is probably just better than Deadweight. Situationally better than Deadweight. Deadweight you can put it on a 2/3. But
well, the second one of these hits a 2/3.
I know. It's probably just better than Deadweight being instant speed as well. With Alchemist Greeting, 5 mana to deal 4 damage to a creature, and it has Madness for 1 and a red. This is one of the swingiest Madness cards we've seen.
Yeah, that's a big difference between those 2 cards.
It's huge. Now, most of the Madness cards we've seen, the reason they were good was that you'd play them on your own. 5 mana to deal 4 damage to a creature, I don't know if that's good enough. Like, we saw people not
That's
playing...
what Burnt Ash is.
Burnt Ash is 6 damage to a creature. Like, it's very weak, but if you're Madnessing it, it's one of the best cards in the set.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be very deck dependent, and you want to be very careful just putting that in your deck with no way to Madness it. I don't know if it's going to be strong enough like that. If you Madness it, obviously it's absurd. Was it Burnt Ash? Reduced Ash.
Reduced Ashes.
Reduced Ashes.
Bingo.
5 mana for 6 damage, isn't it?
5 damage.
5 damage, okay. You can see how little we played that card. So
exactly.
like Alchemist Greeting is one of the biggest swings from Madness to non-Madness that we've seen. And I'm going to be interested to see if it's playable on average. Do you know? And then we also have Savage Alliance, which is a removal spell with Escalate. Dennis reckons this is one of the biggest kind of blowout cards in the format. Do you want to talk about Savage Alliance?
Savage Alliance, when you hand it to me, is 2 and a red. Choose 1 or more. Escalate for a single colorless. Creatures target player controls gain trample until end of turn. Savage Alliance deals 2 damage to target creature, or Savage Alliance deals 1 damage to each creature target player controls. So that's 3 and a red for bolt something and ping everything else,
which is super strong.
Or get everything trample. So
you can do all 3. Nice thing about it, a little bit of synergy with trample and 1 damage to everything, because you'll carry over for extra damage. Yeah, you want to be careful putting it is uncommon, but you want to be careful putting a pile of 1/1s onto the table.
Yeah,
or X1s.
I'll play. I mean, you'd play 2 and a red, shock something, or 3 and a...
I played Geist Blast. You know, I played.
Yeah,
I've played 3 mana shocks before. I haven't been happy about.
You'd play 4. You'd play 3 and a red, bolt something.
I have played 3 and a red, bolt something,
and also randomly shock everything else.
Yeah, I think it's a very powerful card, and again, flexibility.
Yeah.
It can be 3 mana to deal with a big problem creature a cheap problem creature right away. It can be 4 mana to, deal with something and give something trample. It can be 5 mana to just go for a big swing.
It can be 3 mana clear a bunch of X1s as well.
Yeah, it's a very flexible, very powerful card, and one that you'll want to watch out for if you're building your deck with a bunch of X1s.
It's basically Cone of Flame.
Speaking of basically Cone of Flame,
how about basically Cone of Flame?
Spreading Flames.
Yeah,
Spreading Flames is
7 mana.
7 mana. And it deals 6 damage. 6 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures.
I think that's right.
Players.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
That sounds correct.
That is correct.
Yeah, so it's basically
just creatures.
Creatures. It's a fixed value fireball essentially. So you can spread 6 damage out. This is likely a 2-for-1. In a good situation, it's a 3-for-1. Killing 3 reasonable things.
3
It's an instant speed card. So you can do things
mop
like
up after combat and stuff.
Block their 3/3 with your 2/4 in combat and kill their 4/4, their X1 and their 3/3. Yeah. Like you can set up such huge blowouts with this card. 7 mana is a lot.
If your opponent goes play my 7th mountain, go with like 3 cards in hand.
Watch out.
Yeah.
But absurdly powerful card. Should be
near impossible to play around.
Should be played in most red decks that have a slightly higher curve. Now,
yeah.
I think there are red aggressive decks, the vampire decks, but I think this should be played in most red decks.
It's just too powerful.
Yeah, huge amounts of card advantage and onboard card advantage as well. I think it's great when you're behind because
it might just it depends on how the format checks out, but it might just cost too much.
It might just cost too much, but we'll have to see. But I think I'm going to start with playing that in one of my red decks. And then we also have did I do them all? I did. That's all of them. And then green gets Prey Upon.
Yep, which is literally it.
Just green gets Prey Upon. Really good card.
Lovely callback to the old Prey Upon art as well.
Yeah, single green. Target creature you control fights another target creature you control. This is what green gets.
Target you don't control.
Don't control. You just fight 2 things for single mana. It's a sorcery. All the usual fight restrictions apply. Be very careful.
Remember how good Rabbit was? This is pretty much the same.
It's a little worse than Rabbit.
I don't know that it is. It costs 1 less.
But it makes your creature take damage.
Still.
Okay, Dennis has given me a bit of a look that looks like he's taking the piss, but I can't. But yeah, no, just be aware of the mana your opponent has untapped, because if your creature is killed in response, then Prey Upon does nothing, and you just got 2 for 1. So be careful when casting it, but it's a very efficient green answer to creatures, which green doesn't get very often. And then there's also Ride Down. It's uncommon and it's multicolored, so you're going to be seeing less of them than the rest of these removal spells.
Very strong card, though.
But very situational, but very strong card. What it does is you destroy target blocking. It's red-white for an instant. You destroy target blocking creature, and all creatures blocked by that creature gain trample till end of turn.
So what it essentially does for the purpose of the game is it makes it as if the creature that blocked just never existed.
Exactly. Very good counter to something like Watcher in the Web, or a card we're going to talk about later, which is called Give No Ground.
Give No Ground. I was going to say Never Fail or something.
But it's a weird one, because it's one of the best cards in your deck when you're kind of ahead and looking to close the game, but or even a parody and looking to close the game, but does straight nothing.
Just
like
nothing.
It is a blank card when you are behind. So this goes in a very specific deck, which is the red-white, ideally cheap, aggressive deck. And
which wasn't very good in Shadows of Innistrad.
It really wasn't, and we'll see how it is in Eldritch Moon, but this card will do nothing when you're behind. So if you're building anything like a slower deck, I would consider not playing the Ride Down.
Aside from removal, we have a general list of cards that we think you should probably just wash out for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll put in a sweet intro in here with like sirens and things for cards you should watch out for.
Are you going to actually do that?
Sure, you're not going to watch the video.
I'm going to watch the video.
No, you're not.
I'm going to make
sure it's going to be Snoop Dogg all over this video.
Snoop Dogg all over the video. Okay. Yeah, no, what we did was we basically said, what are the scariest... not scariest, but what are the cards that not knowing about them going into your pre-release will cause you the most problems?
Exactly.
These are the biggest blowout potential cards, but also cards that you can play around. So just being aware of their existence.
So we've already talked about some of them that are removal spells.
Yeah, but outside of removal spells, we have already talked about Drowned Behemoth, Flash Crab. It's if your opponent
passes on turn 5
has blue mana up, you should think twice about killing their creature.
Yeah,
or attacking,
which is kind of a nightmare,
right?
Because it's only an uncommon.
It is only an uncommon, and you can be doing maths in your head of going, okay, this creature is a 4-drop. They have 4 and a blue open.
They only need 3 and a blue.
They only need 3 and a blue, but like these are the sort of situations you might run across. Flash Grab is a possibility here.
Yeah.
Flash Grab is not a possibility if they don't have enough mana to emerge it, because obviously you cannot when. This is another sort of weird rules thing about Emerge, is that you will go to put the thing on the stack and then determine what costs need to be paid and then pay them. And sacking the creature is part of the cost, but you can't put the spell on the stack unless you can finish paying the Emerge
so
cost.
You can't go Emerge this, and you can't remove the creature that we're emerging.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that.
So yeah, I mean, be counting the common, like 7 and a blue is the Crab's Emerge cost. It's 9 mana straight. So just when you're thinking about your attacks and your kill spells and stuff like this, be aware of the Flash Grab if they're in blue. Another one is Subjugator Angel.
Yep.
Subjugator Angel is my pick for the biggest groan test of the format very early on. What it is a 6 mana, 4 white, 4/3 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you tap all creatures target player controls. I believe it might be target opponent controls.
Yeah.
So what this does is a 6 mana 4/3 flyer is a reasonable card.
Yep.
It's not a great card,
but it's fine.
We've paid 6 mana for 4/4 flyers in the past
and been okay with it. Yeah.
We've paid 6 mana for 4/4s with minor upside in Dragon's Block. We played a lot of those.
Yeah.
We've also paid 2 mana to make creatures not be able to block until end of turn. But that's not something you really want to put in your deck. Like a Magmatic Chasm is not going to make the cut a lot of the time because it's such a situational card. What Subjugator Angel is
a decent body with a situational card stapled to it,
which makes it very, very
makes it good. Yeah.
So there's a lot of situations where you're going, like I'm sure we've all been in limited games where we're going, geez, if he has Magmatic Chasm here, I just die. But then you're thinking in your head, well, he won't have Magmatic Chasm in his deck because it's a bad card.
Yeah.
Similar to if he has Fog here, I just died. That mentality comes up a lot. But Subjugator Angel is going to be in their deck 99% of the time if they've drafted it and they're in white, because it's just a reasonable card, not in that situation, and it's game-ending in a board start.
Now, it doesn't do a lot when you're behind. Well, it adds a 4/3 flyer to the board when you're behind.
It does as much as any other 6-drop flyer when you're behind.
Yeah.
But at parity, it is the best card in your deck.
It's just a giant...
If you are in a board stall, it will just kill you.
Or bring them near enough where a 4/3 flyer next turn will be able to kill them.
That's a really good point. It synergizes with its own effect. So against white decks, coming into turn 6...
There's something you can do.
You might be thinking to yourself, well, I can't beat the Subjugator Angel, so maybe I have to get
just
aggressive.
Attack,
like this board stall, like especially if you've seen a Subjugator Angel in game 1 or something, or what if you saw one in the draft and you passed it.
Yep.
Might be like, it isn't uncommon, but it will turn up a decent amount of your drafts. So yeah, maybe against white decks, if you're fearing a Subjugator Angel, time to start making some sort of not great attacks. Not bad attacks, but attacks that you might not normally make, using removal spells on creatures you might not normally, just in an attempt to close the game. Something to think about. Something to keep in the back of your head. And then we also have, you brought up Markov Crusader.
Yes.
Markov Crusader is a 5-mana 4/3 lifelink vampire, and it has haste if you control another vampire.
So that is something that you will massively swing a race.
This is the thing. If you're against the vampire deck and you're going, I'll just race him, something to keep in mind.
Something they might just be able to give you the 8-point life swing.
A good indicator that they might have something like this is if you have more damage on board, you make your attacks and they go no blocks, attack you back. Yeah. And you're thinking, wait, they don't win this race.
Now,
watch out for Markov.
To be fair, now if they're Incorrigible Youth does a very similar thing in that it just does a 4/3 haste.
Yep.
The lifelink is obviously a lot worse for you if you are racing.
Yeah. And then we also have Give No Ground.
Give No Ground, which is
No Ground I mentioned earlier. It's
an
a
instant,
4-mana instant.
Target creature gets +2/+6.
Yep.
And can block any number of creatures this turn?
Any number of creatures this
turn. So build your own Watcher on the Web.
Exactly. It's so very strong with Death Touch creatures. Death Touch creatures. But also just another one of those race swingers and a good way to get a 2-for-1.
You can also leave behind your 1/1 and just let it suck up 1 million damage and eat it,
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a 3/7 at that point.
Exactly.
That trades for a good number of things. And I forgot to mention these earlier when I was talking about Madness. We got 2 very good Madness enablers in this block, which are, I don't know, something to save your early removal for, maybe. They're both 2-mana 2/2s. One is in green, one is in black. So we have in green, anyone remember Wild Mongrel?
Yep.
We have Noose Constrictor.
Which is the same card.
It's a very similar card. It's a 1 and a green reach. Discard a card to give it +1/+1 till end of turn.
So instead of changing colours, it has reach.
Exactly.
And it's a snake.
It is a snake, which is relevant for,
snake
reasons. And then we also have Olivia's Dragoon, which is a 1 and a black 2/2 vampire that you can discard a card to give flying till end of turn. Neither of these cost mana to discard cards. Neither of these cost tapping the creature to discard cards. And also, both of them are just 2-mana 2/2s on their own.
Yeah.
Excellent cards and very good enablers for the Madness deck.
Well, is Noose Constrictor 2/2?
It's 2-mana 2/2. It's a bear. It's Wild Mongrel.
So Wild Mongrel's, oh my god, yeah.
It's Noose Constrictor, early contender for one of the best cards.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it's so scary to play against because they're like, you can't block it with a 2/2 because they can 1-for-1 you like that. It's hard to block it with a 3/3 because even if they're discarding 2 cards, maybe one of them has Madness.
Yeah.
And it's hard to just leave sitting there because it can just enable all of their Madness cards, enable Delirium.
Yep.
And also, if you just build up enough cards in hand, it becomes a lethal attacker. Which
just
activate. Like if they're on low enough life, sometimes you just can't block it, or can't not block it.
Or they'll just ditch their hand and kill you.
Just ditch their hand and kill you. Those situations come up. So yeah, very, very powerful card. Very early pick if you want to do any sort of Madness or Delirium thing. And also just a 2-mana 2/2 reach. Like, it's an upside bear with this absurd Madness effect. So those are going to be very, very early picks, I'd imagine. I think that's all. Oh, general kind of speed of the format.
The good removal makes it seem slower.
Good removal makes, so there's a few things that Shadows of Innistrad was
Pretty
a weird
medium.
one because it was there were very fast decks, there were very slow decks, and they interacted very well together. It was part of the thing I liked about Shadows.
But that averages out to a pretty normal speed set.
Yeah, exactly. This, I think, Eldritch Moon, I think, will slow it down overall.
Okay.
My reasoning for this is the removal got a little better. The cheap creatures, I think, got a little worse.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of these cards that are good early and stretch to the late game.
Yeah.
Which means people are going to be spending their mana flipping their werewolf horrors.
Yeah.
Or escalating, gaining 4 life instead of, so you can eke more value out of your cards by spending more mana. So I think the games will slow down a little bit and there'll be more value games, but that is just a guess. It's so hard to tell these things without having played any of the format. You need to wait and see how the format shakes out.
I'm excited.
I'm very excited.
Are you going to the pre-release?
I am not going to make it to the pre-release, unfortunately.
I'm doing a midnight.
You're doing one of the midnight ones?
Midnight pre-release on Friday, in fact.
No, I can't make it to pre-release, unfortunately, but I will be jamming tons of drafts when the set comes out. And I'm very, very excited. I love Shadows of Innistrad, but I think I'm just about ready to move on to the next thing.
I think I'm okay. I'm not quite ready to let go of Shadows yet, but I still got this week. And
you still get 1 pack of it in your Eldritch Moon drafts.
Exactly.
So yeah, thank you for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. If this has been useful to you, or if there's something...
Do let us know if you want us to make more of this kind of stuff that isn't just us drafting.
Yeah, and also if this particular format has been useful to you, then let us know, because we're, like I say, we didn't do these the last couple of times because we weren't sure if people were finding them useful.
Exactly.
Another thing that we'd love is if there's something we didn't talk about that you think would be useful to talk about in another iteration of this, please let us know in the comments or in an email at windmillslammtg@gmail.com.
Exactly.
But thank you for watching, and good luck in your Eldritch Moon pre-releases.
Woo!